Hey, thanks for clicking on this video. Before we head on, please like, subscribe, comment, share. You know, give this video to your grandma. Let her really cherish. And don't forget that we have now a Patreon.
Yeah,
yes.
Revolutionary Rhetoric. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Patreon. Give us your money and give Palestine some money at Revolutionary Rhetoric. Everywhere you get your socials and Patreon.
All right, now on to the video.
We've been really hesitant to talk about Trump because, like, first of all, who gives a shit? And so, like, it's just, I don't know. It's boring to me. I like all these like kind of liberal pundits that are just like just harping on, like they make their bread and butter just talking about Trump 24/7. It always just seemed boring to me. And we've kind of talked about talking about Trump a couple of times, and every time we've just decided no. But there was big news today, which will ultimately, I think, result in nothing at all. But Trump was found guilty on all 34 felony counts a few hours ago. First president to ever be found guilty of a felony. Yeah. So the sentencing happens July 11th. I think the max is 4 years per felony. So, I mean, like, in theory, it could be like a life sentence if all 34 felonies carry at least like a couple of years, or even if each 34 carries 1 year, or even 6 months. He's 77 years old. That could be a life sentence for him. But, I mean, they're going to...
But he's such a robust, healthy...
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they're going to appeal this, which is going to delay sentencing as it goes through the appeals process.
I don't know, man. That adrenochrome, he might be surviving to like 155. You gotta watch out. He'll come out and like when he's like 120 and like go run for president again.
And this is just the hush money trial, like the Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, like salacious one. Yeah. So this has nothing to do with any of like the overturning the elections or the Georgia or the other Manhattan trial. This is just the New York hush money trial, which if anybody's unfamiliar, and I had to kind of like read a few different articles to unpack this because I have not followed this news at all. But in a nutshell, it's that in 2006, Donald Trump had sex with porn star Stormy Daniels. In 2016, the lead up to the presidential election, Donald Trump ordered Michael Cohen, his then attorney and kind of fixer, to pay Stormy Daniels, I think $140,000 as hush money to keep her quiet prior to the election, because like that would look bad as a presidential nominee that had sex with a porn star. The illegality, which is in itself not illegal, but the illegality came from then like the reimbursement from I think both campaign funds and writing it off as a business expense, which is like fraud. So this is like really like boring like financial crime shit that like is like it's just 34 different kind of accounts of like fraud and criminal accounting and stuff.
But that's
like,
really what Trump is at the end of the day. It's just all fucking accounting and business
fraud shit. Yeah. So that's what essentially what these felonies are. Is it's nothing like insanely like super illegal. It's just business malpractice, basically just using campaign funds to pay back personal stuff, which is something I think like, who else just got in trouble for that? Well, Santos got in trouble for it all the time. I remember George Santos, but I mean that's really all that happened. So what implication does this have? I think none. I think that well, for one thing, it won't stop him from running for president. The appeals process will take longer than the election, so he could, in theory, be president on November 5th, or, you know, by November 5th, he'll win the presidency and then just pardon himself.
See, I would argue that what this means is that because he's the first president ever convicted of crimes, by extension, that means he's the first president to ever commit crimes. So now we know how innocent all the other presidents have been.
This exonerates Obama.
Yeah.
And Bush. They committed no war crimes.
Oh my God! You really gotta make sure the sarcasm comes out, because these liberals will fucking believe you.
That's another thing I don't like. That's another reason I don't like talking about these things, is because like ultimately this has no bearing on anything really. This is just like news fodder for like YouTube views. But like at the end of the day, he's either going to pardon himself if he wins, or it'll be tied up in appeals courts until he dies. And so like ultimately like there's no substance here that will change anything for like. I mean, if you want to think of it in like Marxist terms, to get like douchey about it, but like there's no substance here that in any way impacts like working class people whatsoever. Like there's just these are just non-stories for people that like I don't know think the way we think. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
My main question is like, how is he even able to run for president, even if he's convicted of a felony? Because I know with like if you're convicted of a felony, you can't even vote.
Oh yeah, there's the high crimes and misdemeanors clause of the Constitution.
Can you explain it to us?
No.
Because I'm
not a lawyer.
genuinely
I don't know.
confused.
Yeah.
My girlfriend asked me that earlier today. She's like, "How can he even run if he is convicted of a felony?" And I'm
Because
just
it's
like,
all made up bullshit. Like Cenk Uger's running for president, and he's not a natural born citizen, and like he's still running for president because, like, I mean, at the end of the day, we all say we like the Constitution, but I think like anybody who like just says, "Nah, I'm going to ignore it," everyone else just goes, "Yeah, okay, I guess that's fine." I don't know.
I'll give the Constitution a chance if I'm ever like near it and I'm out of toilet paper.
Right.
Like, that's about it.
It's like, I mean, who gives a shit? Like, that's another thing. It's like, yeah, I see your point. Like, yeah, technically, I think legally speaking, you raise the point that yeah, there is a clause in the Constitution that bars you from like office for if you've been convicted of high crimes and misdemeanors. That was the whole drama with like Colorado taking him off the ballot, and someone like New Hampshire or whatever that other state was that took him off the ballot, which was then overturned by either the Supreme Court or the state Supreme Court. I forget which. This was like late last year or whenever this was. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't see how anyone.
Well,
really
I remember
cares.
the legal thing sort of being that, yeah, like you're forbidden from doing whatever if you've been convicted of high crimes or misdemeanors, but it does not define what that means.
Right.
And because it leaves it open to interpretation, it might as well mean nothing.
Right, and I think like what some people would argue is like, well, that's only treason, right? Unless you've been straight up convicted of treason, then you're fine. Which I think is what I heard some people like in favor of, not in favor of Trump, but like arguing that like devil's advocate argument or whatever, where it's like, well, as long as it's not treason, it should be fine. Which I don't know. Again, who cares?
it's
I'm not
just
a
an American
constitutionalist.
politics. It's also a joke at the end of the day because, like, the same people who follow Trump are, very big supporters of the Second Amendment and saying you can't do anything, you can't bear any restrictions or anything like that. But then when Trump is running, Father Trump is running and he becomes president, and in the Constitution you technically can't be if you have a felony or whatever, misdemeanor. They're like, oh, but that doesn't count.
Yeah,
And,
it's just the populist mindset of like.
For me, it's just the hypocrisy of like the right wing, and it's not like the left wing is any better, but it's just like it's just kind of funny how it's like it's just kind of sitting right in their face. And if it was, say, a criminal that came out of a regular ass jail for stealing, for theft, and he was trying to run for city council, that'd be completely against it.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to point out the hypocrisy there.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true though. I don't know if I actually believe that anymore because like I think that would have been true at some point, right? Where like I mean the amount of like shit surrounding Trump, I think 20 years ago or even like a couple of elections ago would have stopped somebody from becoming a presidential nominee. But I think that like since Trump, and this isn't a new thought by any means, but like I think that that's just kind of broken the seal or like opened the floodgates in a way that like I don't think anything matters anymore. I think like moving forward, I think presidential elections are going to be open to just anybody, everybody, because like now we've broken that like illusion that this is some like actual high office that like is noble and like only honorable noble men can take it. Like, well, that illusion is shattered. It's never been true, but there was always that illusion that it was. And
Yeah.
and I think Trump has really shown that like it's a fucking clown fiesta and anybody can hop in and like.
Also, I think that there is historical precedent that like you can be a convicted felon or whatever and still run and legally hold office. Like
Eugene Debs,
not that he won. Yeah, Eugene Debs won or ran from prison, and for as much as I've read about that, I've never seen anything that said, well, he would not have actually been eligible if he won.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't know that there has been any other like. I've never seen anything that said that he couldn't have, and I think he got not an insignificant amount of votes from prison. So
Yeah, it was like 17 to 19%. I remember.
I don't know if it was that high, but it was still like
4 to 6.
Yeah, but it was still it was not an insignificant amount of people. Is my point, but I don't remember the actual numbers.
But 4 to 6 is more than like the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, I think it was less than 10%, but it was but still the point stands is that he did it. A lot of that campaigning and a lot of that election was done from prison.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is precedent for just being in prison, or at least having convicted criminals be on the ballot.
Yeah, it was just a rhetorical question at the end. I know exactly that it doesn't mean shit, but it's like I'm just trying to get like the thought process is like, what the fuck does the Constitution actually mean then? I mean, if like we're not following anything,
you're not
what
wrong.
the fuck?
I mean, the hypocrisy of these people is like is well documented, and like I find a very weird, sick, guilty pleasure in watching YouTube. If you're familiar with I think I've talked about this before. How my fetishization of the First Amendment auditors. If you're familiar with like YouTube First Amendment auditors and these guys that just go and like do. Are either of you familiar with this concept of a First Amendment auditor?
I'm not sure.
So essentially,
I've heard the phrase. I'm not sure I know what it means.
I mean, what it is essentially is it's like some kind of misguided libertarian. Is there almost always misguided libertarians who haven't read enough of any kind of philosophy, let alone Marxist philosophy, but just read enough anything, that are just so enamored with the Constitution and like kind of to your point earlier of specifically First, Second, Fourth, Fifth Amendments. And so they'll go and they'll put themselves in positions of like what is essentially put themselves in positions of danger, like either antagonistic toward police or at least like.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, very much like blasé with when it comes to police. So they'll like go into a police station and just start recording, or go into a public service, any kind of public service office, somewhere that is technically public property. So they do have the First Amendment right to record government citizens, but it's like, you know, and then they'll just like, and what they're pointing out is the flaws in police knowledge of the First Amendment, and police will be like, oh, you can't film here or whatever, and they're like, actually you can, and the police will say, and then the second you deny a police order, then shit always escalates, and so they invariably will either be arrested or, you know, handcuffed and detained or whatever, and then they'll sue the police department, and that's the grift essentially, where it's like,
hey man, I gotta hop onto that.
Yeah. But the problem is that you're right. These people like will have like clothes that say "We the People." They'll have like the "We the People" tattoos. They will be like enamored with the Constitution, but still like. And hate police, or at least like understand that the police, they're looking for the good police, or like, they're just here to root out bad police, but they always miss the point of like, well, there is no such thing as good police, or there is no it just seems like they're always one like epiphany away from actually realizing what it is they're protesting, or like the problem with their logic. And it's the same thing as what you mentioned of like, yeah, these people are like enamored with the Constitution, but they support somebody who flagrantly like just will ignore it if it suits them, and it's just funny. And it would be funny if it weren't very depressing. But
yeah, I find it wholly uninteresting to point out these people's hypocrisy, because if there was consequences, or if they had this sort of self-awareness to say like, oh, you know what, you're right, that that's not consistent, let me reevaluate what I believe.
Yeah.
But I imagine that for every one person that has ever happened to, there's 10,000 more who, the irony is completely lost on them, and it's just you wasting brain power so that you got an aha moment that you can't enjoy.
Yeah, I have never met somebody who is any way remotely believing of these types of things that has even been like willing to have a conversation in good faith to like that their mind could be changed. I've never seen that either in person or on the internet. Like, you know. So I agree with you. It's just, I don't know. The whole thing is just better left just like ignored and then moved on to like other greener pastures that where maybe some good can be done.
I mean, I think to bring it slightly back on track a little bit even, the reason I see me and my friends not really giving a fuck about any of the Trump stuff is the liberal position seems to be that like once he's caught, once you show the right, the conservatives, so on and so forth, that he is a hypocrite and that he doesn't stand for the things that he says, then you've got them. Like this again, it's this big aha moment, but nobody actually gives a shit. They're not ideologically consistent enough for it to matter. So it's this big show to be made of it, but there's no substance to it.
Yeah.
He's not going to do jail time. It's a performative trial. It doesn't fucking matter.
That was our point from the beginning. It's like that's why we've been so hesitant to even talk about this, because it's like at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter. And yeah, like there's like you go on YouTube and just search like the montages of anybody saying like, if Trump were convicted, would you still vote for him or would you care? And they say, yeah, sure. I mean, like that doesn't bother me. That's not a breaking point. That's not that's not in any way like I don't know what you call it, like a selling point to dissuade them from supporting Trump. And then you're right, like liberals still have this like weird misguided notion that it is that like the second he's found guilty that they'll all just like come to their senses and be like, oh, you know what, you were right all along. And it's like that they have long since given a shit that like he's not their messiah. I mean for like lack of a better like idea, that's kind of what it comes down to. So I don't know. The whole thing is just
the funny thing to me is that they're so quick and eager to point out the ideological inconsistencies of conservatives that they seem to have tunnel vision and cannot see their own ideological inconsistencies. Like, you can point out the differences between Trump and Biden, but at the end of the day, like, they're marginal and inconsequential. It's the meme that I keep seeing that I like, that I think sums it up well, is, Trump said that he could kill somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and he'd get away with it, and now Biden's proving that he could kill 30,000 Palestinians in the middle of Fifth Avenue and he could get away with it. So,
God damn, that's fucking deep.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Fucking deep.
Well, I mean, well said. Yeah, I haven't heard that put that way, but yeah.
I saw that the other day and I was just like, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's essentially what it is. I still have conversations with people at my work who are like, vaguely pro-Palestine, or like, we talked about these types of people last week of like, supporting of a two-state solution and like, kind of like finally starting to kind of turn on Israel, but like would in no way question even like the idea of not voting for Biden would disgust them, right? Like when you say, well, like, so then you shouldn't vote for Biden, they're like, but that's, that's unheard of. And it's like, okay, well, you haven't actually thought about this long enough. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, well, then you actually haven't like really bared down on your kind of your ideology and your position on this. And
the only point that I ever hear made that has any vague resonance of relevancy here is, to think about how bad things will be domestically if Trump gets reelected. And a part of me wants to say, like, not that I want Trump, I don't want either of them, but like, that's the thing you always have to defend. If you don't like Biden, you also have to be like, well, I don't like Trump either.
Yeah.
But
they'll immediately shame you. They'll immediately shame you. What about the LGBTQ community? I'm like, they're fucked right now too. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But like, I'm quick to point out that the thing that you're afraid of is that Trump will do fascism in the literal sense of bringing foreign policy home. You're desperately afraid that somebody might get elected that will treat you the way that we have treated the rest of the world for 100 years. So like, just like steep it, like let that sink in, because that's important. Like,
yeah,
if your big fear, like if you're not afraid of how Biden will treat the rest of the world, but you are afraid that Trump will treat you that way, look inwards a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on that you could assess.
Yeah, well said. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. That's the crux of it. It's just a lack of empathy for what is already happening to other people. You only care about if it potentially or hypothetically could happen to you.